I can remember when I was a little girl and sit on the front porch with my mom Muck and my daddy Tab, and it would be just totally silent out here. And now my daddy Tab, I was not allowed after dark outside. That was an absolute no-no. Because he always made the comment, the woolly boogers will get you.
I'm William Jevning, and I've had a 5-decade journey that I would never have expected. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, hunting and fishing in the outdoors, and when I was 16 years old, I came face to face with two creatures we've come to know as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. In the aftermath of that, I met Renee DeHinden and John Green, who were the two most prominent people in the world on the subject of Bigfoot. These two men brought me into their circle at the age of 17, and I was friends and knew both until their passing. 14 years after my first encounter with the creatures, I had a second encounter in Southwest Washington. And today I have 9 books published on the topic. I created a network around North America and other parts of the world of investigators and witnesses. I assumed early on that the Pacific Northwest would be kind of the hub of activity, but that's not the case. The creatures are actually all over North America and other parts of the world. One of the areas that came to surprise me just a little bit was actually the southwestern part of the United States. I did know of some encounters in that area, but I didn't realize how quite widespread it was. This part of the country has a very rich history of encounters with creatures and much going on to this day.
The Lake Worth monster started my curiosity about this sort of topic. And it was the late 60s. We were living on in rural Tarrant County. Below us and some distance away was a Lake Worth wildlife refuge. And people started seeing, there's a whole interesting set of accounts with people seeing this creature, a white creature. And there's even one photograph of it. And people experiencing it. And then one night, several people saw it. It wasn't just ones and twos. I remember going with my friend's family and driving around in there at dark as a little, 5-year-old, looking, hoping that this Lake Worth monster, which I was like, okay, let's go look for it. Yeah, what is it? It's a gorilla. Oh, okay, we'll go see the gorilla out in Lake Worth.
And some of these stories are starting to creep out, encounters that people have had. The Lake Worth monster was one of them. They had one in the 70s in El Paso. They called it the El Paso werewolf. There's been, if you go down further into the state, there was the wild Manilano, and that was in the 1800s.
In West Texas, the 3 biggies, and Texans, we have to have a nickname, so we can't just... And this was really before Bigfoot, most of these. So it has to be a Caddo critter, which occurred in 1964-ish, and in that area, where Caddo is a very small little town, West Texas town. And it bothered a rancher who shot at it. And, and it was seen by other people and for a time being before it wandered off. And here in Taylor County, in Anson County, we have a little community called Holly. And in 1977, the Holly Hen made an appearance in broad daylight, just off the Clear Fork of the Brazos River. 2 young men working on what in Texas are called boys' ranches. First noticed they'd sit down to rest, and somebody had started throwing rocks at them. And they yelled at somebody to stop, and then somebody stepped out from the tree line, and they took off. They ran to the closest house around them, and there was a young lady at home, and she grabbed her father's .30-30, I believe, and they went back out after it, saw it again, shot at it again, and no hitch recorder or anything, but the Holly Hen left. Now, within the weeks after that, you have all kinds of instances of sightings in and around that sort of neck of the Brazos area.
I've read some encounters where people have shot a deer and the damn thing comes running out of the woods, grabs the deer, and is ready to fight for the deer with the hunters. and that's over in the Toledo Bend area, that's the state line. Toledo Bend is actually on the Louisiana side of the state line, but that's a Sabine water reservoir. It's huge. But you go to that area, both sides of Louisiana and Texas have had encounters for years.
The third creature in this area of West Texas, is called the Haskell Rascal. Now, those accounts go back over 80 years of people seeing something. You don't normally, in the 20th century, it becomes, they see a gorilla, a large gorilla walking around, as opposed to before the gorillas, you had hairy men or something along those lines, because they didn't know, and obviously didn't know what a gorilla was. So at least among the mainstream. So you've got these 3 gorilla sightings that kind of triangulate here in West Texas. And those are the big 3, and they've all got their own names.
And I think that is a place that they were coming across from that over there to here. Over from Post Oak Ranch over to here is where it was coming from. So it would not surprise me if they're not holed up over there in those woods sometimes too. I didn't know what a woolly booger was. And I've heard that terminology all across the South too. You know, when we were stationed in different places, people in the South always call them woolly boogers. And of course, when we were in Alaska, they were hairy men. But I mean, I would sit and listen to him, and he would tell me stories. And he was the first one that told me the story about over in Marble Falls about the girl that was actually abducted. She was tending to a herd of goats and sheep up on in the hills up there outside of Marble Falls. And one actually abducted her and ran off with her. Now, as the story goes, I guess it's whichever story you want to believe, historically they say that they cornered this thing. They actually found her over near Blanco. I mean, so it had cornered her a good ways. And she was alive and well. They said that they cornered it in a cave and killed it. Now, my daddy Tabs told me a different story. He said, no, they never caught it and they didn't kill it. So, But back in the 60s, when I was still quite young, there were stories about them seeing them out in the Highland Lakes area, out by Lake Buchanan and Inks Lake and that area out there.
I got an older brother that lives in St. Augustine, and you start talking to the older guys, and they start really giving you some juicy encounters that they've had, that, mysterious hogs coming up missing, and then they find where they were gutted. So Texas is ripe for experience, and it's ripe for encounters. It's just no serious study has really been done here. When I was a kid, my aunt Karen and my cousin Forrest had moved to, not very far from here, about 60, 70 miles as the crow flies, to an area that locals know what I'm talking about. When I say Lone Star Lake, they all know the area. The lake's been renamed. They moved up there. My dad said, go up there and keep Forrest occupied. So anyways, we ended up, me and my younger brother Gerald went up there. Keeping Forrest occupied, giving him something to do, because my aunt started a new job, working in a hospital. She's a nurse. And we get up there, at one point we decided we're going to go frog digging. Go down to the dam, go frog digging. And that, of course, that whole road was, had fencing, and at one point they were lined with live oaks and pecan trees, and that road tees into a county road or a farm to market road, and at the T on the other side of the road is a general store where they sold snacks and bait and gasoline and that kind of stuff. The people that own it lived in the back of that place. So anyways, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. We're walking down the road, and we get all the way down to where the cow pasture was, and we're kind of watching these cows just bucking and kicking and carrying on and raising hell. We're like, look at those cows, they're all acting like they're calves. What the hell's going on? Well, my cousin Forrest stopped dead in his tracks, and of course Jerry Lee run into Forrest, and I ran into Jerry Lee, and we thought, shit, did Forrest see a snake in the road? Because it was lit enough where you could see some detail. You would be able to tell if there was a snake in the road. So anyways, he points, and we looked to where he's pointing, and it was on the other side of the road, probably 15 yards from us. This thing was crouched, and I'm like, oh, it's a bush. Well, the thing stood up. It wasn't a bush. And it walks into the middle of the road, and it's just looking at us. And before I knew it, Forrest and Jerry Lee were already walking backwards. And I'm sitting there, and he takes a couple steps forward, and I'm looking around. Oh, shit. So I start backing up, and we back up. We didn't run. We didn't turn our backs to it. We just backed up. And this thing was huge. It was probably 6.5, 7, maybe 8 feet tall. But it was the widest set of shoulders I think I'd ever seen in my life. And we could tell that it was covered in hair. You could see that. Couldn't see any details of the face. Big broad shoulders. Didn't have a neck. Couldn't see the neck, but we could tell it had a head. The arms were a little longer than what you would expect a person to have. Anyways, it's following us as we're walking backwards. And we got within, however far it was across the road to just, 20 feet on the other side of the road onto the dam road. There was a big salt vapor light, like a street lamp there. And it stopped, turned to its right, and jetted towards the peach orchard. Well, as it got to the fence, 4-strand fence, it just stepped over the fence. It didn't jump it, it just stepped over it. And was walking at a very brisk walk towards, the interior of that. And this was a pretty good sized orchard. I bet it was probably 15, 20 acres. As soon as that thing jetted into that peach orchard, we turn around, we hauled butt to the general store. We're beating on the door. Open up, open up, open up. Well, the people own the general store, like I said, lived in the back. They opened the door. We need to use your phone. We need to use your phone. So they got the phone, called my aunt. My aunt come picked us up. We're telling my aunt. My aunt's like, yeah, somebody's playing a joke on you boys. So we all went to bed. Well, next morning, sheriff and a deputy shows up. And sheriff's like, what'd y'all boys see last night? What do you mean? Well, we understand that you were down there. Why were you down there that late? Told me, gonna go get frogs at the dam. Well, before it was all done and over with, that's when we found out that that farmer that had all those cows, 3 of them were dead. And not that we were getting blamed for it, because all of them had broke necks. One had been disemboweled. I'm not sure about the other 2, but I know one had been ate on to some degree. And then shortly thereafter, we'd left. Went back to Uvalde County. And we get home and tell my dad about it. I'm like, yeah, okay. Left-handed cigarettes? No, we're not smoking left-handed cigarettes. So anyways, my aunt calls my dad up just in a few weeks of us coming home. She's coming home. And she's talking to my dad a while, and my dad calls me and Jerry Lee back to the kitchen. She said, "Tell me again what happened." I'm like, "Why, Dad?" He said, "Just tell me again." So we told him. And he said, "Well, this is what your aunt's moving back. So something's going on up there." And well, apparently on the other side of that peach orchard was a guy that raised coonhounds. And this guy lost 2 litters of puppies in one night. They just disappeared. And what made my aunt decide to move back was not that. This is what made my aunt decide to move back. A woman and her child had broke down on the main road going into town. But they got out, and shortly after getting out, the woman got knocked out. And her little boy got chased down the road to where he made his way into a culvert, a drainage culvert. But this kid crawled into this culvert to get away from this thing, and it was trying to pull him out. And the kid was, pretty much catatonic. If I remember right, it was a deputy that seen the car stranded on the side of the road, stopped, found her, got her up. She's screaming, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Where's my baby?" And they start walking around, and they finally find the kid, and he's catatonic. So his feet were tore up. They were cut up from probably broken glass and rocks. But they got him in the emergency room, and my aunt was working that day. That's how she found out about it. And my understanding was that the woman had a pretty good wound on the side of her head, but it wasn't enough that it required stitches or anything like that. It was you could tell that she got a pretty good knock. But the kid was just hysterical. When they finally got him calmed down, that's when he said, "This hairy guy tried pulling me out of the culvert. He chased me down the road, tried pulling me out of the culvert."
So I live in Central Texas, and where I found the tracks is actually on we have a private conservation lake on our ranch, on one of our ranches. And when I saw that it was just sandy beaches, I got really excited because I'm an artifact junkie, and I knew I could find some good, maybe some points, and I also just love pretty rocks. So I was down there looking, and I got a pretty great point the first day, a bunch of fossils and just various things. And the next day, my dad came down, and he brought a truckload full of kids with him. And they could really run on that side more because it's just a sandy beach as opposed to all the rocks on the other side. And now the lake was completely frozen. And as a matter of fact, the kids were throwing rocks way out on the water, big rocks. It had been frozen for quite some time. That morning it was around 9-10 degrees. I, of course, got my head right down in front of me, and I was looking at rocks and at fossils and flint. And all of a sudden, the kids come running up. "We found footprints. We found footprints." And I was just thinking they had found some big animal tracks, because there's just tracks everywhere down there. And when I walked over there and I saw that first track, I was, oh my gosh. And they're not so big. They're about a lady, size 9 in comparison to my foot probably. But the depth of them is just wild and crazy. And they go down the beach and then up the fence line and out of the beach area.
And we parked away from where she said the tracks were, and we walked down a precipice. We parked up on the floodplain and walked down it. It was still a bit muddy. And I saw the first forensic evidence I'd ever seen of North American ape. And huge feet, and then smaller feet, and then feet in between that. And then some of them were really deep, and the ground was wet and moist, and I tried to smashing my heel into the sand, trying to make anywhere close to an impression as that, and I couldn't get close. So did measurements, did the step ratios, all those kinds of things. You could definitely tell that it wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of them. They were all heading in the same direction, and they were kind of all over the place. You could tell they'd kind of wandered around. They weren't just marching in a straight file. They were, the larger ones were almost like a baby's foot, even except very large, where there was no heel section that sort of comes off the foot. It was just a big. The heel seemed just as wide as the forward portion of the foot. So it was not any type of large human. Plus, these were really large.
No one is crazy enough to be down on a beach walking barefoot in that weather. And it was very obvious that it was something much more substantial making those footprints.
26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Somewhere in here they take a hard turn. 39.
And the tracks went along the base of the reservoir. They faded as they got further up the hill, and then they did not cross a barbed wire fence. They took a left at the barbed wire fence. It was obviously a family. There were a set of large tracks, a set of smaller tracks, and then a set of even smaller tracks.
I'm a floral designer also, but I specialize in foraged florals, and both fresh and dried and native. And so I'm constantly out. I'm also a rock hound and an artifact junkie, and I just want to be outside. And so I work outside, and I'm real familiar with everything that's around me. And in a big area, because I have access to a lot of property.
Look how deep that is. 51, 52, look at those toes. 53.
But the one neighbor who lives across, she said well, that would explain my dogs and their behavior lately. And her dogs, of course, they were puppies from out there, and they just run everywhere. And lately they've been acting really strange and hanging right close to the house and right close to her. She's outside, and which is really unusual for them. And then the other neighbor, she is the one who works for my dad, and she's the one who told me about his cattle, and that I had heard that they had some things on game camera, and that's why she said, well, we haven't seen anything like that. She said, but that we have got that mountain lion. And she said, but that's not, she said, there's nobody else, Annabeth, who has access down there who would be down there at that time. And this weather. So, they were definitely both pretty shaken. I would be if I lived up there, and well, I don't know that I would be. I think I'd be very intrigued. Also a little like, those are some really serious footprints. They were shocking to me the first time I saw them. I'll say that.
We got good-sized little ranch-style home right here. And right here, you've got a regular tank. But the tank doesn't have access to the reservoir water. It's uphill from it slightly. And the water's rancid. But the cattle will not go down to the reservoir to drink. They'll only drink from the rancid tank, which is just standing rainwater. But I just thought it was fascinating that these at least 1,000-pound bulls that were right there, well, 1,000-pound bull, several 800-pound bovines, because they're feeding them right there. I mean, their feed spot is right there, but she said they will not go down to the reservoir to drink. They will go to the tank, which is 30 more yards, 40 more yards to get fresh water. Isn't that interesting?
My grandson-in-law had gotten out. He went to work at like 5 or something like that in the morning. It was still dark. And he got out of the truck, opened the gate, drove through, had got out, closed the gate, was in the process of getting into his truck. Now he's a big guy. He's like 6'2", probably 220 pounds, big guy. And this thing jumped the fence right in front of him. Yeah. And then got down 4s and went across, and then on 2 feet jumped the fence going across the front. Yeah.
Wow.
So, same year on Christmas Eve, and I had already left, his mother and her boyfriend was sitting over there smoking his cigarette in this area right up here. She came back over here, and that big stump that's laying over there, at that point in time, Devin was going to do something with him. I don't know what he was going to do with it, but he had it laying right here. And when she was coming back across, she stumped her toe on it, and he kind of fell down. Watch out. She's fighting with a red wasp over there. She fell down and I guess let forth a few exclamations. And her boyfriend was the one that saw it, was the motion. And they both stood up, and she said, there was a man all dressed in black looking at the cats in the cat house. And I said, a man all dressed in black was looking at the cats in the cat house? And that was kind of when we first started putting 2 and 2 together. Okay, what Devin had seen up here, what there, and then I had come out one morning and I saw these twisted tree limbs hanging out back here in the back. And I'll never forget, my friend of mine, Wayne's like going, oh, the horses did that. I'm like, the horses can't, even if they were standing on their hind legs, which I can't imagine why they'd be doing that, could reach up that high and do that.
My goodness.
That's what used to be the feed trailer.
Okay.
And they literally ripped this door. Well, the first thing that I noticed was not only that the feed door was literally peeled up at the bottom, and this one was ripped off. And the trailer had actually been moved, scooted over like about 2.5 feet. Yeah. Like it had just been pushed. And I was like, I mean, you could see the indentation. And that was the same day that we started finding like these type of things with the...
Oh, you got it. Yeah. This is their sign.
And they were all over out here.
My first sighting, I worked for an oil field company here in this town, and I drove nights, and my dispatcher called me early one morning, and said, "We need you to go get one more load." Well, lucky for me, I've got I got a river on the south of me, and I got a river on the north of me. So I'm between 2 rivers, and the creeks and streams are all over out here. A lot of water, but the river to the north of me is called Cimarron, and the river to the south of me is called the Canadian River. Well, this particular early morning, the place that they sent me to was out on the Cimarron. And I'd been to this location lots of times, never had any issues, never had anything weird happen. It was the month of November in 2015. I get to the location, and I'm trying to get my stuff gathered up in the truck, and finally jump down out of the truck, and as soon as my feet hit the ground, every hair on my arm stood up, and I thought, oh, something's not right. And I knew that deer season had started, and the first thing that came to my mind, I wasn't even thinking Bigfoot. I was thinking there's a deer hunter close by, and I need to be real careful, and maybe I need to walk around this location to make sure that I don't get shot. That was my mindset. And I walked around the location, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, and I thought, well, I must be really tired from working all night. And so I went ahead and started the job and jumped back in the cab of the truck. And when I jumped back in the cab of the truck, I was writing out a ticket for the job that I was doing. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see movement in front of me. And I'm like, that's kind of odd. And I looked up, and when I did, he was standing probably 30 yards from me, and there was a great big oak tree there. And this area's got lots of sand because it's on the river, and there was a sand bank right there where this oak tree was. It was a dead oak tree. And we have stuff here called sand plums, wild sand plums here in Oklahoma, and they're on the rivers and every place like that, and people make jams and jellies with them. Anyway, there was a bunch of plum bushes right there where he was standing, and I could see his arm, I could see his shoulders, and I could see his face. He was looking right at me, and his face was charcoal colored gray, and then his hair was black. I saw black on his arms, black on his shoulders. I couldn't see anything below, like his waist. And I grabbed my phone and took a couple pictures. I set my phone back down and was looking and watching him. And I watched him for probably a minute and a half, and never saw him blink, never saw him move. It looked like I was looking at a statue. And at that point, I thought, man, I must be really tired because I'm delirious. I'm seeing things. So I decided, I need to get this job done. So I got out of the truck and put all the tools back on the truck and put the hoses on the truck and jumped back in the cab of the truck and started to drive off. And when I did, I looked over. It was gone. He was gone. Never heard him leave, never saw him leave, never heard anything. He was just gone. And that was my very first sighting. And I knew when I didn't see him when I was leaving, I knew that what I had seen is what I had seen. And I was on cloud nine because that was something I always wanted to see and wanted to experience. And I finally got that. From that point on, I mean, when I got to the yard where I worked, man, I was telling everybody, showing them the pictures I'd got on my cell phone and everything else, and they were just laughing at me and everything else. And I thought, you know what? I don't really have to prove it to anybody because I proved it to myself. 3 months after that, I went on the very first expedition that I'd ever been on, and that was down in the Sam Houston National Forest in Texas.
I'm Joe the host. This is Walter Padilla. I'm the executive director for the JRG, the Jevning Research Group.
It was November 8th, I believe. We got there. It was a group of 3 people. We got there and, we had the idea of, searching the woods for the famous Bigfoot, which I had no knowledge about at this point in time. And as we're talking to each other and, getting our equipment ready, a guy shows up in a pickup, gets out and says, you guys okay? Yeah, we're fine. Oh, you're looking for Bigfoot. And that struck us as very, very odd. Long story short, he offered to take us somewhere to see the Bigfoot against our better judgment. We said, yeah, sure, why not? Like, as if it was a good idea. And so we drive down a little bit ways down the road. Nothing happened there, so he offered again. Again, we say yes. And once we got off the vehicles, I started walking to the right side of the road of the forest, and there was a tree that's on the creek that's almost on top of the creek, and so it's at an angle. And there was a big scat, about a Coke can size kind of scat, and I was trying to make sense of it because I've seen a lot of scat before from other animals. It doesn't compare at all to a bear scat. It's nothing like it. And as we're looking at it, we received this low growl from across the creek, a growl that was so it was the most disturbing thing you could hear. It wasn't a scream. It was like a growl, like a possessed lion or some kind of demon. And with each growl, your rib cage would vibrate to the sound. And man, I've never heard anything that scary. So I had the brilliant idea to jump on the creek because at that time it didn't have that much water, and try to find some prints. And then it was like I cursed at it. It started growling even more. And everybody's saying, "Oh, don't be dumb, get out of there. It's gonna eat you, whatever. It's gonna kill you. You're crazy, get out of there." So he did a really, really loud growl. And that one just scared the heck out of me. And we all got out of there, and we massed kind of in the middle of the road where we parked the vehicles. And that's where all the sounds started going off. They started imitating cows and coyotes and, all kinds of sounds. And it was just hard to figure out, man, what the hell is that? Because it would do a cow, but at the end it would get excited and it would do like a simian rah, and then you would hear the coyotes howl, and at the end it would. It started as a howl, so it would go like oh, and then woo, 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 woo. Like it would get like I don't know, like a simian type of scream, and it got very scary. We got objects thrown at us. You could hear them. They had to be doing it on purpose, of course, to let us know that we're there, but I felt like they were funneling us.
We could see them standing behind the trees and then going on all fours like spiders crawling around all around us, and they were trying to funnel us to where the gate was, or past the gate. And it was just a horrible encounter. Then out of nowhere, one of our friends starts yelling, over there. And me being me, I decide to run inside the forest to our left side.
And it was scary. I've never been that scared in my life. I almost lost my mind. And somebody yelled, there. So I instantly told everybody, stay together. And I grabbed my gun and I'm pointing out in the middle of the forest to the left side of us. I would say maybe 8:30 to 9 o'clock. And out of this big, thick tree, this head bobs out and kind of takes a look at me, and I just froze. I've never seen anything quite like that. He kind of hides back again, shows his head again, looks at me, and gives me that up and down look, and I just feel every inch of my body frozen. And at this point, I know all I'm gonna do with this gun is just piss it off, and it's gonna kill me. It's gonna shred me to little pieces. And I've never felt that impending fear of death. Like I felt like that was my last day alive. And I holstered the gun, and he does this one more time, and you could see his shoulders were probably about 5 feet apart. They were so wide, you could see them on each side of the tree. And I put my hands up in the air, and I start saying, okay, I'm done, I'm dead, I'm done.
And I walked out thinking that it was just gonna grab me and snap me or bite me or something. But thank God nothing else happened. We all got in our vehicles and we hightailed it out of there.
I was sleeping in here, and I woke up to this going like that. And it's not particularly easy to move like that. And I looked at it. What actually woke me up initially was the cats were making some really bizarre noises outside. And I got up and I looked over there, and the cats are all staring at this window. And I see the air conditioner going like that. Well, my first thought was, at that point in time, we had a couple of mares that were loose out here. And I thought, you know, they were going to fold. That was the reason we had them out here. I remember now. I thought, oh, one of them backed up to that and they're using it as a butt scratcher. And so I'm over there beating on the wall on the inside. Get away, get away, get away. And I'm looking out here. Now you can see right on the other side of the building here is a pole just like that. And it has a pole light on it. Now that pole is high enough that at night it illuminates all the way over here to the barn. And I used to park my truck right there by the butane tree. Well, I'm looking out there and all I can see is black. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And I kept beating on the wall. And then that was when I guess it had stepped back just far enough that I could see the pecs and the musculature. That's when I just kind of like, you know, it's heart in the throat time, and I reached and grabbed my 410, and I thought, either I've got a guy that's bigger than Shaquille O'Neal out here that is running around naked, or I got a problem here, Houston. And I could not see the face because it was up above the window. Now you see how small this window is, but it was actually above the window. And when it finally backed up, and I guess I was screaming, and I actually had, like I said, I had grabbed that 410, and I was going to go out and I got to the door and I stopped, and I thought, no, I'm not going out that door. Because I think it was at that point in time that I kind of realized what I was dealing with. And I thought, no, even if it was a human, that may be something that's just baiting me to come out. So I turned around and I actually used the stock of the 410, and I was beating on the wall, screaming for it to get out of the way. Now, at this point in time, my cats, this has actually got a second level to it. They were up there hiding. They wanted no more part of the whole ordeal. And so that point, he has stepped back, and I say he because it looked like a male to me. Anything that big had to have been a big boy. He stepped back, and the only thing that I really will ask me, what the face look like? Well, I didn't get a good look at the face because he immediately swung this way, and he went that way, and then walked right next to my truck. And that's when and I'm like peering out of this window, and I could see him, and he was a good head and shoulders above the cab top of my F-350 diesel over there. And that was when I went, oh my God. You know, I always joked around when I was in college, I'm going to go out and discover Bigfoot. Well, I didn't have to worry about that. Bigfoot discovered me.
And I get called out one night to a suspected prowler. And it was an older couple. They were in their 80s. They've since passed on. Hispanic, didn't speak much English. Apparently, a rocket got thrown through their kitchen window. And that's what caused the old man to go out front to see what it was. Well, we got on the front porch. This thing took a swipe at him, just barely missed him. He kept saying, Diablo Muerto, Diablo Muerto. And I'm like, dead devil? And, my Spanish is good enough that I can kind of muddle through most conversations. But it's not so good to understand what he was talking about. And when I finally got it figured out, he was talking about the monster, the devil monster, was trying to kill him. But apparently this thing took a swipe at him and then walked off into the dark. The date was November 25th or 26th, 2015. I had got called out to a prowler call, suspicious circumstance. It was roughly about 1:30 in the morning. As a matter of fact, it was Thanksgiving. I show up, make contact with the homeowner. In her most frantic Spanish, she told me that the individual was in the backyard rummaging around. So I went, drew my sidearm out, starting to traverse towards the left side of the house, and noticed that there was a 5-foot stone wall, and that's pretty indicative to this area. She kept pointing to the other side, so I started to make my way towards the other side. Went around to the back side of her house. As I turned the corner, I could see something in the very faint haze of light. Something was rummaging around in the backyard. I took another step, and in the light of my tack light, the light beam, I noticed that it stood straight up, turned around, and was facing right at me. And it stood stock still. I took another step and started to raise the barrel of my weapon up what I thought would be, upper chest level, and could see a very muscular, very massive human form, covered in hair, definitely not fur. Fur's different. Fur has a follicle count of excess of 10,000 follicles per square inch. This was definitely hair. It was probably, at the longest points, probably 6 inches long. At the shortest points, 2 or 3. And I noticed that I'm looking at the midsection of this individual, and I kept raising my barrel up so that way I could get a bead on its upper chest. And by the time I passed its pecs, I'm almost at a very loosely description of 45-degree angle. This thing towered over me. Well, when the beam of light hit its face, it threw its arm up to cover its eyes like this. And when it did, it had a chunk of stove wood, or a very short piece of chopped lumber, and it threw it at me, and just barely missed my head by just an inch or so, because I could feel the wind off of it as it passed over my head, and it slammed up against the side of the building. And I didn't know what to think, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, holy shit, this thing is big, and I don't have a big enough gun. It's one of the few times in my law enforcement career I actually wished I'd have brought the shotgun instead of the handgun. Anyways, it was covering its face like this, and I could see its eyes, and I could see these teeth. It wasn't like it was bearing, it just had its mouth open. It wasn't bearing teeth at me, it just had its mouth open. Very, very big, very blocky looking teeth. Not necessarily gapped or misaligned, but definitely, not taken care of very well. Very big looking. I seen one incisor, I can remember seeing that, and thinking, holy crap, is that a big tooth? I could tell that the face wasn't necessarily covered with hair, like around the cheekbones, the nose. That was all kind of a grayish, blackish looking skin. I couldn't tell if it was skin pigment or if it was just because it was dirty. I don't remember a smell. I stood there for, felt like forever, and we just kind of looked at each other. And it wasn't, like I said, didn't show hardly any aggression, but I got the feeling that it wasn't terribly happy with me shining that 500 lumen light in its eyes. During this, quasi Mexican standoff that me and this individual was having, I heard leaves crunching behind me, and the one thought that went through my mind was, shit, there's two of them. And I turned around and looked, and down just right at my heels was a scruffy old mutt, a dog, kind of cowering behind me, using me for cover. I suspect it came from underneath the house, and I turned around and looked, and it had already turned and started making its way into the darkness towards the desert area. I wasn't in shock. I didn't call in right away to dispatch and describe what I had just encountered.
One of the weirdest things that happened to me was we were out at another location, and I was with two other guys, Shane and Ernie. And someone had told me to take a dog whistle and try the dog whistle out, that I would get a response. So I was sitting out there, and we pulled over. We're on the side of the roads, out in, like I said, out in the middle of damn nowhere. And that's where the area me and you went to that one night.
Oh, that's
yeah, we heard all those howls and stuff. So we're standing out there, and I blow the whistle, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and I set it down, and we hear this freaking growl come back at us, and it like hit us right in the chest. And it was, even though it was so loud, it wasn't like it filled up the forest. I mean, it came from point A to point B. It was just the weirdest sound I had ever heard, the weirdest growl I had ever heard. And it was definitely pointed towards us, and it wasn't happy with me blowing that dog whistle.
I didn't let it go. Even though my chief's like, just kind of let it go. And I'm like, I didn't let it go. Kept doing some looking into it. And then we had a boy that was going home from his friend's house. He was on a bike, and it was at night. And it was late October. And there's a big curve in the road. And he gets there, and he just stops his bike. Apparently he doesn't feel right. He turns around and looks, and there's this damn thing right behind him, flipping his lip up at him, showing his teeth, baring his teeth at him. Scares the kid half to death. Kid gets back on his bike, or really never got off of it. He just starts pedaling, and the damn thing grabs the back of the bike, and basically pulls the bike from underneath of him, shoots him out the front of the bike. The kid said, I hit the ground, I rolled, and I got up, and I was running all the way home. I'm like, okay. Sheriff's office got the call for that. I just happened to just show up, after the fact. And buddy of mine, we need to check this out. All right. So that weekend we go and check it out. We're kind of patrolling along. We get to this pecan orchard, and all of a sudden we look. We got the takedowns on our overheads going, and I look, and we counted 9 sets of eye shine in this area, in this pecan orchard. And we're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And all of a sudden we hear this roar, and I look in the rearview mirror. I can see this thing standing behind us. and it roared at us, and you felt it in your chest. That's how much volume that sound wave had. I mean, it was booming. And the only way I can equate it is it was like a lion's roar. Boy, I jumped on the gas. We're gone. And I'm trying to text Will. I'm talking to Will the whole time. I'm texting him. Holy shit, the thing just roared at us. I could see it in the taillights. And Will's like, get out of there. And I'm driving as fast as I can. So anyways, we get out of there, get to an area, and Will's like, hey, look, get your buddy someplace where you can get him some coffee, get him to kind of calm down, because my buddy's having a real hard time with this. I mean, it scared the living hell out of him. Well, we get to Denny's, and his supervisor shows up, makes him get in the car, and of course my buddy wouldn't talk to me for a long time after that. Not until we got the DNA test back, because when we went and looked for that bike, okay, well, we found the bike, and that area is right along the Rio Grande. We find the bike. It's in the tree 15 feet. And we finally get it down, and we find blood on the back upright where the saddle is. Swab it and send it off. And he didn't call me after that until he got the DNA test back. And then what had ended up happening was after we did the DNA swab, this was back in 2015. Buddy of mine that's with the El Paso Sheriff's Office sent it off. And when he sent it off, he didn't send it off right. Instead of checking the CODIS box in the order form to cross-match it with anything in CODIS, he hit the complete box. That was like a $60,000, DNA test that, the sheriff was not happy about. Anyways, it come back, and he calls me up, and he's like, dude, I know I haven't been talking to you in a while, but you got to hear this. And I'm like, what? And he said, that DNA test, that swab that we did? I was like, yeah. He said, it come back. And I'm like, okay. And he said, it come back with primate and human markers, species unknown.
Okay, well, this is the back door where we were having incidences where they were coming up to the back door and looked at the alarm on there. And then one night I guess it was I had actually kept a diary all the time. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning.
It was pretty much consistently 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that was what was so peculiar about it. And it sounded like an elephant was falling down the back porch. And they were gone by the time we got to the back, because you can just see there's just a sliver of a window, and it's actually frosted through there. And you really can't see from that window there in the kitchen angled out. So, but it did. It was so funny. By the time both of us got to the door with both of our guns, it sounded like an elephant had fallen down the back porch there, and they were gone.
My wife had talked me into getting out of law enforcement. So I went and got my degree in wildlife management and ecology. Well, during the process of getting my degree in wildlife management and ecology, I ended up going working at Clamato Ranger District in the Gila National Forest. And the Gila is really just the Gila, regardless of whether it's in New Mexico or Arizona. So anyways, we went up there and I was working, and one of the girls in the Clamato Ranger District was telling me about a lake that had been, people have had incidences there. You don't fish after dark. You leave there as soon as it starts getting dark. So I just wanted to go see what I could see. And I went up there 7 o'clock in the evening. It was on a Friday. Get up there, I'm checking stuff out. Well, when it starts getting really, starting to get dusky, I start hearing some whoops and some hollers. And I'm just kind of sticking around. Well, the darker it got, the closer the yelling got. So I got a little concerned. I had a pistol in the truck, but I'm in a national forest. They tend to get a little ticky about gunfire. Not that you can't shoot in the national forest. Hell, you can hunt the national forests. But they tend to get a little ticky about it. So, anyways, I'm, kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. I keep hearing all this commotion. And I'm about 15, 20 feet from my truck. And the commotion's just getting louder and it's getting closer. It's getting more frequent. Well, then I start hearing it come from different directions. From across the lake. And it's a small man-made lake. But it's across the lake. And it's in front of me. It's off to the side. It's on both sides of the road. And it's behind me. So when it got to the point where it was, the sun had went down, it was starting to get really dark, I could hear them really close, like within 50 yards. It'd be my guess. I happen to have an old can of bear spray in my truck, and I just spray a big giant circle around me. Holy shit. They went nuts. And it wasn't, it wasn't like a big bunch of chimpanzees going whoop, 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 whoop. No. They were screaming. They were pissed. And you could tell they were mad. The darker it got, the closer they were getting. So I could tell that, because I was off the boat ramp a little bit, that they weren't very far away, and it wouldn't take much for one to charge me. So I'm like, it's time to get the hell out of here. So I made my way to the truck, turned my light on, and everything went quiet. Backed out of there, and I left. I've known people in not just the ranger or in the Forest Service, but in the National Park Service that take that subject matter real serious. So some guys get real ticky, especially law enforcement rangers. When they start getting ticky, then you start paying attention.
Up there it would have been on the right-hand side of the road. There's a deer crossing sign there. And we were coming back from doing laundry. And she was driving, so
Yeah.
I actually got a better look at it. I was looking at
You were looking at the sign.
I was looking at the sign because I thought, they still haven't fixed that blooming sign. It's somebody had shot it, and I thought, that's really silly. Is that the only deer you're going to be able to shoot is the sign? And
it had been turned.
And it had
sideways.
Somebody had turned it sideways. And I thought, why? And I had already called DOT to come out and fix the sign. And they still haven't fixed the sign as far as I know, but I think it's kind of blown itself back around the way it's supposed to be. But I was looking at the sign, and then and it was like I just kind of caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I went, what is that in the middle of the road? Sitting right smack dab on the yellow stripes up there. And it was more down, we had passed the sign, and it was past right directly in front of my property, and it was sitting right there, and it was squatting, and I'm not going to try to imitate it because I will probably never get back up. But it was squatting. It wasn't literally sitting on its butt. It was squatting with its butt near the ground, and it had turned its head like it was away from the lights. And Jessica saw it too.
Yeah, it was like, because I was like, what the hell is this? I don't want to hit it.
Yeah.
Because that thing is, it was big.
It was probably, I'm going to say, just squatted. It was at least 4 feet. And yeah, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah, because it was taller than my truck tires.
Yeah.
Squatted down. So.
Yeah, regardless, we didn't want to hit something, and we were like, and at that point, then she she gets on past it, and of course she's in her big truck, and I'm like hitting the dash. I said, turn around, let's go back. And of course she was already thinking that anyway.
Yeah.
And we pulled a U in the road and came back, and of course now it's gone from the middle of the road, and I'm like, where did it go? Where did it go? You were looking that away.
Yeah, I was looking to the right. You were looking to the left.
I was looking to the left because actually it was funny because the lights, her dashboard lights, were reflecting right up next to me, and so I couldn't really see out my window the way she's got the windows dark over there, but I could see clearly out her windows. So I'm like looking this way, she's looking the other one. I went, oh my God, there it is, and it was going down the culvert, the cement culvert out there, and at that point in time it was on all four. Yeah. And then it made just like boom, making an immediate left turn and went over the fence into my property. Now here's the funny thing about it. She's been in the military, in the Army. We get up here to the gate. I'm one of these people, even though at my age, I've never been really scared of the dark or anything. And you'd find me out here, if I heard something, I'd be out here wandering around in the dark. We both sat there in that truck for 2 or 3 minutes before she finally says, I'm getting the gate. And she didn't even bother to close the gate because we were both thinking, well, if Junior went over the fence.
Where the hell is Mom and Pop?
Yeah.
Nope. All the horses are put up. No horses are out. We're leaving the gate open.
We did. And I don't normally do that, so it was kind of comical to see both of us out there. No, who's going to get out? Who's going to get out of the truck? But we haven't been seeing deer.
No.
And that's very unusual. This is the whitetail capital of the world. We got more whitetail deer than there's probably people in the world here. So
it's like, I know in Marble Falls, literally in the city, you can actually hit a deer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just cross, and it's like,
or the deer can hit you. I had one run out in front of Walmart, run right in, smack dab, buck ran right smack dab into the side of the truck one night. Oh my God, it broke my heart.
Yeah, it was one of those, the fact that there are no deer, and
that deer sign is up there for a reason, because I literally used to have herds of deer. Herds of deer. I mean, it was nothing unusual to come out here and see 20, 30 deer at any one time. I don't see that anymore. I don't even hear the coyotes like we used to.
Yeah. Wow.
And the other thing I told her the other night, because we were leaving out here, I don't remember where we were going, and a little rabbit came across the driveway. I said, we don't ever see rabbits anymore.
Basically, I went down this certain area, and I was just kind of out and about with my dogs, and I just happened to start looking down and on the ground, and there was tracks everywhere. And I was kind of dumbfounded about it, and I called Will about it, because I couldn't figure out why people would allow their kids to run around barefoot in this stuff. I mean, we're talking mesquite, cactus, we're talking nasty stuff that you're not going to let a 6-year-old child run around in. I was casting tracks, and where I was at, I casted them, and everything was fine. And then I started getting this smell, and I was waiting for the tracks to set up, and there was a barrier of tamarisk, okay, which is salt cedar. And come to find out, whatever this thing, well, I know what it was now, but it was on the other side of the tamarisk. It wasn't real happy that I was casting tracks, and it gave this odor, and I'm like, oh my God, what is that smell? That's like the smell of death. And I was like, where is this coming from? I didn't smell when I got there. As I was, finally I popped the casts out, and they came out pretty good, and I was pretty proud of myself. But I had my dogs in the side-by-side, and I walked back to the side-by-side, and I had actually let my older dog out. He was just kind of running around, just doing his thing. I just happened to look up above him, and I see a black flash, just real quick, like 1.5 seconds. Just something big, something black, just like a shadow. I didn't expect anything about these creatures or anything, especially in this area. got in my side-by-side, and I took off. And I was going up the road, and I had a clear shot of 200 yards. And I just happened to look back down because I was trying to place kind of where I was at and where I casted them, and I had a really good shot of where I was at. And I looked down, and something caught my eye. I stopped, and it only happened, like I said, usually when this happens, 1.5, maybe 2 seconds. It's almost like a kind of a blur in a way. Well, whatever this was had really long arms, and I was telling Tom this a while back because I got pretty freaked out by it. It was moving across the road, and it was using its right arm and its left leg at the same time, and it was sidestepping. It affected me because it was not natural, and that kind of spooked me. And I was like, okay. Well, as soon as I saw that, as soon as I stopped, it almost like hit the ground. It disappeared, and I was like, okay, well, I'm done here, and I'm going to go on. So I did. That was the first time. It's not just in one spot. And there's several places I've been to, and you just have to look at the topography of the land, and I find them. I find evidence of them. So yeah, in my opinion, there's a lot more of them in Arizona than what people understand.
Nice. As long as we got your alarm going off, we might as well keep it up. Let's go look at that torn up thing.
Oh no, I can see that. But there's right near the ground. Yeah, it's right on the ground. See?
They got a sharp view, sporadically moving. So we got some eye shine on the ground down there.
That's on the ground right over there. And it's now disappeared.
Okay.
After we saw that, but then we got to moving around. When PEC came out here and cleared all this out, they had it piled up, and I'm not kidding you, it was up.
Wow.
It was up above my head.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was not pushed back, way back like that. And I was like, Jessica, how in the hell did that all get spread way the heck back there?
Yeah,
That's what we couldn't figure out. We couldn't figure out how this all stuff got knocked down and spread way back there.
Wow. Yeah, because I used to be able to walk beside it and around it.
And around it, you can't do that anymore. It's all been knocked and pushed back. And we hadn't had any bulldozers out here doing that.
Wow.
Right there.
Whoa.
See where the parachute cord is?
Got some ties right there.
Up there.
Up
Huh?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gracious. Oh, you got a sign on that tree though, right? That cracked? That cracked thing?
Did you just hear that noise?
Oh, I think that, well, if it was a clicky-clacky thing.
No, it was out here. It was like there's something going to the garage.
Well, let's see if we can flare this guy. Flaring it. See, what do you think? That brush is so dense.
I just see a lot of behavior that you would see with chimpanzees that are exhibited when you start hearing people tell about the tales, and even in my own encounters, the juveniles, the constant harassment, and that's what it's become for me, is harassment. They need to take their game someplace else, or to somebody else down the road, maybe. But you hear about people talking about them breaking into their homes and getting beat up. And one gentleman had his finger bitten off. And people getting hit in the head with a can of beans for no reason in the middle of the night. I'll never live that one down. Do I trust them? No. No, I don't trust them. I've heard enough about the things that they do and their behavior with other people's stories. And, granted, there may be some of these stories that are made up and, elaborated on and such as that, but I don't think a lot of them. I think a lot of them are true. And all facts considered, I don't think they're a primate that you can trust. I really don't. And I see behavioral changes, and I've seen that with a lot of people saying some of the things that they're doing. I think that maybe what we're dealing with now is that we've had the old alphas running this show for a while, and they're probably being deposed by younger ones that have been more exposed to humans and probably show far less more fear. The old guys probably kept them away and kept them out of trouble. And I think what we have now are younger ones coming up the power pole that don't have fear of humans anymore. So this is why we're having people that are having problems, and probably why we're having people that are missing too.
New Mexico is certainly a place I would have never thought there was Bigfoot. I moved to southern New Mexico less than a year ago. And visiting here 2 years prior, I have a friend who's a police officer. He doesn't work for the local force, but he worked just outside of this area. But he has many friends in the police force here. And lo and behold, there were 2 weeks before I came on one visit, there were a group of people just outside of Las Cruces that had a Bigfoot throwing rocks at them, and they called the police. The police went out and investigated. They told my friend, even though he's not part of the force here, still a police officer, he knows people in the profession, and he told me, and we went out and looked, and we did find some evidence of the creatures being there. I would have certainly never thought they were going to be in a desert location. However, we're not far from the Rio Grande River, and there are really large pecan orchards here, very large ones, and you could have quite a number of these creatures in that area, and they'd never or rarely be seen. So it's another area that's surprised me. I moved away from the Pacific Northwest into Northern California thinking those were great areas. I come to the Southwest, and here they are here too.
If you go after one of these things and you shoot at it and you miss, you better pray to God you can get the hell out of there, because they don't understand what firearms are, but they know it goes boom and bad things happen. They don't understand how it works, but they absolutely understand what it does. So, do they get upset? Absolutely. Are they vengeful? You bet. And will retribution be fast? It won't be fast enough. The problem is that once it gets a hold of you, you're smoked. You're done. John was a great example of why you shouldn't do things to these creatures. Because it was, very short period of time after he sprayed one down with a water hose, he got the shit beat out of him. That's just no nice way of putting it. He got hammered pretty bad. So, my caution to anybody that does serious research, be mindful of where you're at. Don't go out by yourself. Too many researchers go out by themselves.
Yeah, so sometimes it's like if I'm going to be out here for a long period of time, especially close to dusk, I'll have my gun on me because it's like, no, it's not safe to be.
And I don't even know I have a 357 and yours is what, a 40?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even know that our pea shitters would do anything, Primates, especially gorillas and chimpanzees, the muscle density is so much more so than ours that it takes a lot to take them down, a lot of gunpowder to take them down. So, and I think with the size of that mother that I saw that night, I'd need a frickin' elephant gun.